is Victoria Nalule again, and today I'll be joined by Mr. Osai, and we'll be discussing about the topic of a resource curse in Africa. He will first introduce himself, and then he can give us some insights of what is happening in Nigeria. Are the people benefiting from the oil and gas industry? Do you think Nigeria is experiencing a resource curse, or what's the way forward for African countries to be sure that our people benefit from the oil and mineral resources? Mr. Osai, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Victoria. Like she said, my name is Osai Nnodim. I'm Nigerian, obviously.
Yes.
And I'm an accountant by profession and also a PhD candidate here at the center. But I have a lot of interest in the oil, gas, and energy sector because it's kind of critical to Nigeria's economy. So I think it's a very interesting take, coming from the financial or commercial background and then having an interest in the non-technical sides of the oil industry. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
All right, thank you, Mr. Osai. So basically, I'll give a brief background of what a resource curse is. I know most of you know what it is. It's a situation where a country which has a lot of oil and mineral resources tends to be less developed compared to other countries which have less minerals. And most of these countries are characterized by conflicts. They're also characterized by low economic development. And in addition, most of them don't have democracies. So basically, that's what people refer to as a resource curse, and it's also sometimes called a paradox of plenty. So, Mr. Osai, about the oil and gas situation in Nigeria, what's your view? Do you think you Nigerians have benefited from the resources?
In my opinion, I would say, let me contextualize it a little bit.
Okay.
There are benefits, that any country that has a plentiful supply of natural resources that they can export will have naturally. You have diamond, you have gold, you have oil, for example. These are commodities that have value outside your country. So if you export it, definitely you, as a country, you're in a position where, number one, you are going to be having revenues, like a quick source of revenues, which is a good thing in a sense. And also, because you have all these resources, international financiers see you as a viable, a credit-worthy state, so to speak. So you always have this credit facility available. So the good thing about it is access to funds. You will have access to funds. So Nigeria, since the discovery of oil, has had that. But in my opinion, that's where it ends.
So,
I mean, the people, the masses, the Nigerians on the streets, I wouldn't really say they have had, the commensurate amount of benefits they should have had, considering how long Nigeria has had her natural resources in terms of oil and gas and all of that. It doesn't compute if you look at it. It should be a lot better. It's not. So, to me, I would say no.
And what about the aspects of the effects of the oil and gas sector to other sectors, like what most of them refer to as the Dutch disease?
Yeah.
What's happening to other non-resource sectors like agriculture? Has anything happened that is negatively impacting on the people?
Yes. Okay, I'll use my state as an example.
Which state is that?
River State.
Yes.
Port Harcourt, the oil capital.
Okay.
It's like the Scotland of Nigeria.
Okay.
Because that's like where the biggest city in the Niger Delta is in Port Harcourt. And so for a long time, oil companies, I think they had a lot of their headquarters there even, before they moved to Lagos and all that. So in Port Harcourt, in the 70s, we had government-sponsored programs called School to Learn. It was agriculture focused. You know, the idea was to incentivize, you know, people to. They noticed that our mainstay, which is because we have a lot of arable land, you know, and you know, agriculture is also a viable, you know, export, you know, export product. But because of the Dutch disease, because you know how it works, right? Quick money, lots of resources. It pulls in skilled workers, and then there's a lot of money to pay high wages. The wages are above the national average, and then you now have all these distortions in the economy because of that. Other sectors cannot be as competitive as this one, and then as a result of that, they suffer. So, you know, we had things like, you know, School to Learn. At least there was the government pushing people to go towards agriculture. It failed in the 80s. What's this other? It's another government, the Reason Farm, for example. That one failed too in the 80s as well. Right now, there isn't doing that. And we are now in net, oil is 90% of our export. And nobody does anything else again. So that's not good.
Okay, and then as I moved around some of the African countries that have resources, now like Uganda and Tanzania, which have gold and other minerals, I realized in my country some of the regions with these minerals, they weren't developed. What is the situation in Nigeria? Because in my last video, I showed an example of a school found in a gold-rich area. So I don't know what is the situation in Nigeria. Is the infrastructure reflecting the fact that you guys have the resources or not? Like the local people, how are they benefiting?
It's a poor situation. I don't think in Nigeria it's any much different from the other countries we went to. I don't know if you've heard about the Ogoni situation, the Ogoni people.
Massive
in the Niger Delta. Okay. You see all this armed conflict, MEND, Mossab, you see all these groups coming out, kidnapping oil workers and all that. It's because of the local disenfranchisement. A lot of people are upset with the oil companies that we have to bear the brunt of the ecological and environmental issues that come out from your activities. But we don't partake in it. Look at Bonny LNG plant. I think it's the biggest in West Africa. LNG processing plant. I don't think up to 10% of the staff there are from Bonny. I don't even think up to 50% are from River State. You know what I mean? So there are different people come from everywhere else and do this. In a way, I can understand if you're talking about skilled knowledge. You probably want to get the best skilled people from all over the world to come and work because it's a highly technical exercise. But I would say the disenfranchisement is real. People are not seeing the benefits of these activities that are going on all around them. So there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of kidnappings. There's a lot of armed groups agitating for all kinds of things because it just hasn't translated.
And what would you recommend for other African countries and Nigeria in particular? Because at the end of the day, we as the youth will be in those offices one day. And me, I'm always of the opinion that we have to question some of these principles that have been accepted for a long time. We have to question them. We have to come up with new ways of making sure that at least our people benefit from the resources. Because at the present, you realize that it's only mostly the oil companies and maybe a few people in government who are benefiting from the resources. So what should we do in case we get in the offices, in case, the young people out there, what would you recommend?
It's a complex issue.
So
I don't think there's a simple answer to it. Because how I understand it, there are different. It's like there's a two-pronged will I say, methodology that the resource cost acts with.
Yeah.
It has internal factors and it has external factors. There are two different agents that come together and work and then create it.
Yeah.
And we, if we get into positions of power, the much we can do will be the internal.
Yes.
There are still going to be external factors. Okay, so I think.
What do you mean by external factors? Are these the influence of the international community?
External factors, I would say yes, because to begin with, the resource cost usually happens in emerging economies, right?
Yeah.
With a lot of resources to sell out in the market, and then the biggest players usually come in from an external source. It's not like you as an emerging economy have the capability either financially or technologically to handle what you have to do. So other people come in, they have the expertise, they know this a lot more than you. And this is a capitalist, let's say, neoliberalist world we're in. So they come in with the intention to get as much as they can from you. And a lot of times you don't know from within, but for it to be really sustainable long term, there should also be, I would suggest that the host countries, international financial institutions, and the private sector, the international private sector, form some sort of multilateral framework, okay, where they start pushing actively transparency and accountability. You know, they've already started having things like the equitable principles, for example, with banks. You have things like the IFC standard, the EITI, and all that. But you know, these are all piecemeal.
And they're mostly focused on the internal one, but then we need something that can also push the external forces.
Exactly. Exactly. So you see what I mean? So there should be this external thing. If we disregard it, it's there. It's something that we'll have to think about.
And if we disregard it, the problem will not be solved eventually.
Yeah.
Because we are mostly focusing on accountability, transparency. Those are very good principles within. Our people should know how much revenue they are getting from the resources and how the government is using it. But then what about the exploitation from the external forces? That we also need like a framework, as you're saying.
Yes,
someone to control it, to say that you guys, what you're doing is bad, or you need to improve like this and this.
Yes.
If you're operating in this area, establish like 5 hospitals, like put up those acceptable principles, internationally acceptable principles.
And I would even add that it shouldn't be, because a lot of these they have a general voluntary, thing to them. Like, I don't think they're really punitive measures per se if you don't do that. Like, for example, look at the equitable principles. There is no independent overseeing body. Nobody monitors the banks. They self-regulate with the equitable principles. And I think that's a loophole if you think about it, because how do we know? You just say you're doing this, and then you want other people to do it. How are we even sure you're doing what you are saying? And it's just. So I think that is an important part that we should look at, apart from internally looking at it. Nigeria is diverse, and I would say a lot of Nigeria's problems post-oil had some roots pre-oil. It's just that the availability of the oil revenue exacerbated these conflicts and blew them up to the point where it's now open violence and tribalism, ethnicity, and all. It's complex. If we start to talk about it,
we'll have another chance to discuss more about this issue of a resource cost, about revenue management, and so on. Because at the end of the day, we need to contribute something to the African countries. It's not all about getting the knowledge and keeping it to yourself, but also being able to share that knowledge. And it's also a way of inspiring the young African people out there that we can do it. We can try to do something, make our contribution in this world. Thank you very much. Osai, do you want to say something to the young Africans who are watching you out there, those who are even thinking of doing postgraduate studies, masters, PhD, whatever? What would your advice be?
Well, my advice will simply be that all of us as Africans, I think we should, as much as possible, create this bond of brotherhood. Okay, I think there's too much separation within us. This person says, "Oh, I'm Kenyan. Oh, you're Uganda. Oh, it's Nigeria." It's about, look, we all have common issues that I think, we all should solve when we come together and do that. I wouldn't really say, doing a PhD, for example, I don't think it's for everybody. And I think everybody has their part to play, For example, I'm not a farmer, but somebody could be very experienced in farming and have a part to play. I could talk about financing and investment and all that, but you see, that's my part. I can play. I think we should all come together. That's just my message.
All right, I totally agree. We need to come together as one of the great men said from Africa. Together we stand, and divided we fall. Thank you very much, and have a good evening or a good morning, wherever. But thank you very much for watching. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.